Today we sit down in the shop with Garret Seesing, who's a Master Automotive Technician, and he has recently opened his own shop called Scooter 911 in Austin, Texas. He also has a really good YouTube channel, so please check out his channel. I'll put a link in the description below. It'd be a great time to sit down and chat with him about what his journey has been like coming up through the industry and coming to the point where he is today with having just opened his new shop. And also we'll talk about what his YouTube channel's been up to. So thank you very much for joining me today. Appreciate that.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Lindsay. Thank you very much.
No, happy to do it. I thought it'd be great to start out with just giving a brief overview of how you got to the point where you decided you should open your own shop, and then go from there and discuss what it's been like in the first few months of your opening.
Sure. So it's kind of a really long and convoluted story. But in 2000, in the aughts, in the early aughts, I was getting into motorcycles, much to my parents' dismay. I was still living in their house and showing a lot of interest, and I bought my first motorcycle from a yard sale. It was actually a yard sale leftover that my friend's dad bought. And, I was working on cars at that point, working for my father in his shop. And I was like, well, what's the difference between a carburetor for a car and a carburetor for a motorcycle? Ended up fixing my own bike. And among my friend group, I was sort of the technician of the group. Everyone say, oh, your window doesn't go down. Well, take it to Garrett. He can probably fix it. And most of the time that was true. So anyway, in the aughts, there was this influx of Chinese scooters becoming available. At that point, I was living in Montana. Motorcycles, weren't very popular just because of the snow and the gravel and all these dirt roads and things. And scooters were even less popular. And if you wanted to get into motorcycling, the cost of entry was so high, it kept a lot of people out. But they started importing Chinese scooters. They started shipping all over the United States, and they were being sold at like pawn shops and other things. And you could buy them on the internet and get them delivered to your door. And no one knew anything about them. No one knows. You can't get a service manual for them. Now you can get service manuals, but at that time, no one knew what the brands were or what things were or anything or how they worked, how they operated. And two of my friends bought Chinese scooters, and they were two completely different manufacturers and two different bikes. But as they broke, which Chinese scooters do the best, nothing breaks like a Chinese scooter. They would come to me and say, hey, my bike stopped running, can you take a look at it? And then I started assessing it like, oh man, this is the same thing that I saw on this other bike. And then I kind of built the reputation on that. As I was going through college, I did a brief stint at a shop called Scooterville in Missoula, Montana, which was kind of on its way out the door, once again, because even though it was a college town, scooters aren't very popular in Montana. And as much as I loved them, as much love as I could put in wouldn't keep the doors open. But they also wouldn't service Chinese scooters, so I kind of became the Chinese scooter guy in Missoula too. And I was going to school to be a music teacher at the time. I completed school, started teaching in Frenchtown, Montana. Really wasn't making very much money at all. And it came to my summer break. I had to get a summer job to be able to keep my rent because, music teachers don't make anything. And while I'm shopping for my next teaching contract, trying to get maybe $25,000 a year, I started working at Tire-Rama in Missoula, Montana, as just like a tire technician, just doing like tires and brakes, like basic line stuff, like quick service stuff. And found out that I was making way more money doing that. So I thought, you know what, I like this. I like working with my hands. I like making money. And I like that when I go home at 6 p.m., I don't have to lesson plan or email parents or worry about things. I just, wash my hands, knock off, and go home. So I did that, worked in a couple shops in Missoula, decided to take a year off teaching, and then what I decided I really loved to do was play music and work on motorcycles. So in Missoula, Montana, there's like 4 technician motorcycle jobs available. You can be one of the 2 techs at Beartooth Harley Davidson, or one of the 2 techs at Big Sky Power Sports. So like, if a town of 50,000, you have a very slight chance of getting in there. So I thought, well, let me move to another town that'll allow me to play more music and work on motorcycles more. And I thought, well, I could go to Austin or I could go to Seattle, because both of them have great underground jazz scenes and both of them are pretty motorcycle-y towns. I was on Austin Craigslist, and there was a motorcycle shop looking for someone who knew Harley Davidsons and Chinese scooters, and those were my two biggest things, because my daily driver was a Buell Blast, which is a Harley platform, and then Chinese scooters I knew. So I interviewed. I think I sent an email off. It went well. The shop owner invited me down. She said, if you're ever in town, come down and I'll give you an interview and then we can do this. So I drove the 30 hours from Missoula to Austin with my housemate at the time, and did my interview, and then we turned around and drove back, and she offered me the job. And so I just sold everything that I could and packed my toolbox up in a U-Haul and came down here. And I worked in motorcycle shops for a while and loved it. And the first independent shop I worked for, I learned more than I could have even imagined. My knowledge base expanded exponentially at that point, just because we were working on everything from, a Pook Twingle from 1964 to, a brand new 2008, or well, I guess brand new at that time was like 2012 R1. Like, we're doing everything under the sun. And that was great, but I was able to kind of specialize and learn more. Bounced around a little bit, did a stint working for the city of Austin, which is where I met you.
Yep.
I was hired on there to do the police motorcycles for Austin Police Department. But then they found out I had automotive background. I ended up working more on the automotive side of the shop, much to my dismay, because I really don't like working on cars. I moved away from Montana to not work on cars. And bounced around after that, worked my way up to supervisor shop for the city of Austin, doing heavy equipment and over-the-road trucks and some police interceptors. At the city of Austin, I found the knack, and I want to talk about this later. The knack I found is specializing. So I had done a stint at an electric vehicle dealership here in town, and I had a pretty good background in battery management systems and things like that. So at the city, no one wanted to touch the Priuses or the hybrid Escapes, and I said, well, let me mess around with these. I've got a scan tool and I've got a knowledge background. Maybe I can make something happen. And then I found that if I was doing that, they didn't make me work on like the dog catcher truck or some of the disgusting things that came in. I could just take my Prius to the corner, fiddle around. All the old guys are like, oh, I don't want to touch that, and it was great. So I got to experience that, and I ended up getting my L3 certification, advanced level certificate in hybrid and electric vehicles, which I maintain to this day because I think it's the future. Anyway, long story short, I ended up getting headhunted by another company to run an automotive shop for them, and was working my fingers to the bone. And I thought, if I was going to work this hard and be this drained from my job, I might as well be doing it for myself. And honestly, I don't ever want to work on another Nissan Sentra. So I thought what I would like to be doing is working on scooters and motorcycles. There was a hole in the Austin market. There's only one specific scooter shop in town, and they're not in the best of times right now. They're having a hard time finding really good technicians, and they're kind of getting swallowed up with work, and they don't even work on some of the things that people need. There are a lot of brands that they won't work on or work with. So I decided, well, it's a perfect opportunity to open my own shop. It'll allow me to make more YouTube videos. It'll allow me to work on the things I want to and grow my knowledge base and, grow my company from just an independent shop to being sort of an online resource for scooter owners and riders, selling parts and doing tutorial videos and things like that.
Now, I know a lot of mechanics and technicians who have as a goal wanting to open up their own shop. Of all the ones that I know, I think only 3 have actually done it.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head. One guy became a mobile technician. Mm-hmm. One guy opened up a European shop with a partner of his, and you. Mm-hmm. And everybody else that I know of that has thought along these lines has, for one reason or another, not done it. And I think a lot of it is feeling intimidated, feeling like they're taking a big risk or a gamble even, or just not wanting to undertake the amount of work
Yeah.
that's required to start and run your own business. What kinds of things did you have to overcome to get to the point where you decided to pull the trigger on it and move forward with your own thing?
Man, well, I have dreamt about opening my own shop for a long time. Like, there's nothing like working every day, like burning your hands for money and like kind of scraping by, and then watching the owner of the shop buy a new Corvette. You're like, did I buy you that Corvette? Like, did these cuts on my hands buy that Corvette? And the answer is yes, of course. Yes. So I had it in my mind, and the first hurdle was just understanding income streams. So as a technician, you are sort of your own business, and you don't really get a grasp of overhead, but you kind of get an idea, like, I need to turn this many hours because I have these bills at home. And so you're kind of processing that. And the initial time I was going to open my own shop, I was just terrified by the amount of money it costs just to rent a space.
Yeah.
I was like, how can I ensure that I am going to make that much money every month? Let alone enough money then to pay myself or, do what I need to do. So that's what stopped me, and I thought I needed an investor. And I was pretty sure I needed an investor after that point. I was certain. I was like, okay, I've got to find an investor who's going to want to do that. But then I was like, well, I don't want an investor. I don't want anyone telling me what to do, because they're not going to know. Unless I find an investor who knows everything about this industry that I know, they're not going to want to just like relinquish, the control of things. And I'm not going to be comfortable with their ideas. And if they did know everything I knew, they would just open their own shop. They have all the money. Why would they invest in me? Anyway, so that was another hurdle. I thought for a long time I needed an investor. Fortunately, I was being compensated pretty well at the last company I was at. Had some stock options, and they ended up being pretty good. So I ended up with a pretty good chunk of change that, I was like looking at where I can allocate this money. Should I invest it? Should I pay off some of my other debts? What should I do with it? And just looking at that chunk, which, I wouldn't say it was a sizable chunk of money, but it was enough to like do some serious debt damage. I could have wiped out my student loans or wiped out some other things. I decided, like, all right, this is it. I know that I can do this job, and if I don't need anyone's input or anyone's money, I'm pretty sure that I could manage it. And also managing things for the city of Austin, and like really understanding what revenue, how to put your revenue to work, and how to set up accounts and float things, gave me the confidence, like, okay, I know enough about how this mechanism actually operates to sit there and build my own. So that was like the knowledge base, the financial base, and just like the intimidation of like not knowing. Like, what would I do? Like, how am I going to dispose of my tires? Like, how am I going to get my oil delivered? How am I going to set up my first vendor accounts? And, a lot of distributors have a minimum initial purchase, and that already was intimidating, because like, oh man, I got to put together like a $4,000 purchase for my initial purchase to open this account. Like, that's going to eat up so much of my nest egg, and like I won't be able to make profit on that purchase quite yet. Should I outfit the shop with that money? Should I, all those decisions, and a lot of like wringing of hands and mashing of teeth over that initial first expenditure.
So what got you over that hurdle and that anxiety? Because there are some guys that would just let that defeat them.
Yeah.
Because it is expensive to start a business.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Everything takes an initial outlay. You have to get loans or an investor or save up a bunch of money, whatever it is. When we started the tool business, we took out loans for it, and it took us 5 years to pay them off. So only now that we're 5.5 years in the business, only now do we get our first initial loans behind us, right? So it takes a while to see these things come to fruition, and that can be a lot for people to get their minds around. So, what made you decide that you could handle all the finances that came along with it, but also how'd you get over the anxiety of wondering if when you open the doors, there's anyone going to walk through them?
Well, those were like two huge pieces. The first thing was I just thought about every boss I had had up until that point. And I wondered, is any boss that I have had, any shop that I've worked for, was any of them smarter than me? And I couldn't think of one that had anything specific that I'm like, oh, you know what? Yeah, he was really smart with this and that, or like he really knew the industry. They always just seemed to be guys in the office who like became totally irrelevant, didn't have a clue what was going on in the shop, but like always had the feeling of like, well, you need anything, you come ask me. It's like, yeah, can you help me reprogram this ABS module? They'd be like, oh, I don't know, let's get Mark in here.
When I said anything, I didn't mean anything.
I had this boss when I was working in Missoula. I had this boss who kept his toolbox in the shop, for posterity, or I don't know why. He had like a classic Craftsman like stackable box, the old school stuff. And he would always tell us, anything you need is in that box back there. Anything you need, you don't got a tool, check in that box. I bet you I got it. And one day we went and got a wild hair. And we're like, well, let's see what's in this box. He didn't even have a complete set of metric wrenches. He had like some brass feeler gauges. He had some like antiquated tools where you're like, yeah, my guy, I'm not going to be setting the reluctor gap on this distributor. So that was that. So that was the first thing, realizing that there wasn't more, the people running businesses around town weren't more capable than me and weren't smarter, didn't have any extra thing. They're not business majors. We kind of have this mindset now that you have to go to school and learn about all these acronyms and all these things to be able to apply. And I'm sure it does help. I've definitely found gaps in my knowledge in that thing. But that was the first one. And then I had a lot of side work always banging down my door. I had a really good reputation as a technician, as a motorcycle technician here in town. And I had a lot of customers that tried to follow me after I left a shop. They would still, hey, where are you now? I want to bring my bike to you. Or like, hey, can you work on my bike on the side? I want to get this and this done. And I've always enjoyed that. And, for the YouTube channel, it was great content. When someone would bring me a scooter or a motorcycle to work on, hey, I can shoot some videos. I can do something I love to do. It's not a Nissan Sentra. So I had that. And then just knowing that there was a hole in the Austin market. I mean, if I was to open a motorcycle shop, like, if it was just a shop that was going to be Austin Power Sports or Austin Moto something, all those names are already taken anyway, but it was going to be a red and black logo, and we were just going to do Harleys and, metric cruisers. There's a ton of shops that do that. Yeah. That part of the market is saturated. But there is a space for a scooter shop here in town, and like watching who would be my competition's like social media feed, like seeing that they have so many bikes that they can't accept any more work right now. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, so they've got the entire market and they can't even handle it all. So even if my reputation doesn't match up to theirs, I know I'm still going to get at least some trickle down work, and trying to calculate what that can be like. That's what got me over that initial like, okay, this would be viable if I did open it. I know the work might not be there in the first month, but it will be there eventually.
And I think that's an interesting point, because there's been a truism in business since business has existed. And I'll give you an example of what I read years and years and years ago about how to create a competitive advantage, right?
Yeah.
And the example was, there's two cosmetic stores right across from each other in a mall, right? How are they both going to survive if they both sell similar products? Well, they got to know who their market is. They have to have an image. They have to have their own brand image, and they're going to market to specific people. One might get like an older crowd, might get a younger crowd. One might get, different taste preferences based on who they are, what they're doing with their lives, and all the rest of it. And that's where they're going to find their marketing advantages over the competition. Same is true in any business, right? If you have a scooter shop, then what are you going to do that another scooter shop isn't doing? And I found the same thing in the tool business. Like, how can we be competitive in a landscape which seems to be fairly well saturated
Yeah.
with Snap-on, Mac, Cornwell trucks, and everything else.
Well, maybe not Cornwall.
Well, maybe not Cornwell. But what I found was, A, it's not as saturated as I thought it was.
Yeah.
Right? That there's plenty of business to go around.
Right.
And B, even if you do a couple of things, one or two things that the other guy's not doing, that's going to set you apart. So when you're setting up your, and maybe you're still early enough in how you're setting up that you haven't quite realized this to its full potential yet, but how do you market yourself and set yourself up to have an advantage over your competition?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that also kind of played into what I dreamed this business could be too. Like I didn't set out to make maximum profits off repairing bikes, because that would have been a completely different business model. A lot of what I set the business up to be was a community staple. Like Austin has it had a huge scooter scene when I moved here, and it's kind of dwindled, I think, because there's not community support. There's, shops poo-poo the bikes, they won't work on certain things, and there's no way for people to develop their, how do I say that? Develop their enthusiasm for the sect of their hobby, right? So you want to be a scooter head, but how do you become a better scooter head if you're not supported by a shop that will show you some things or sell you parts and tools? And I notice that a lot with my YouTube channel, man. People are always asking. Every morning I wake up to like 60 YouTube notifications that it's people asking me like, my bike does this. I have one of these. What do you think about this? Do a video on this. And so like I knew there was a market for just answering people's questions. Yep. So we're teaching classes in this shop. We have our first class scheduled to just teach about basic maintenance and just the basic, how does the bike operate? What's actually happening when you twist the throttle? And that is something that no one is doing. It's a differentiator for us. It supports our ethos of the shop of being a community supportive facility, but also, that's also revenue. You teach a class, you're going to make money on that. So it's kind of like things kind of aligned with my vision of where I wanted the company to go and the holes in the market.
But I think it's interesting, too, that you mentioned the different facets to that business. It can't just be scooter repair. It can't just be one thing over the other, right? And as you look to see where your additional revenue streams are going to come in from, it fills out a much bigger, more comprehensive picture. And that should lower as a business owner, should lower your anxiety level.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it was the same thing when we decided to become a firearms dealer.
Yeah.
Right? We said, well, it would be great to have a secondary product line. Of course, once the pandemic hit, that went out the window because we couldn't sell a gun or ammo to save our lives. But now that things are coming back, at least it's becoming a more legitimate secondary line now. And I think that the better businesses realize that they have to diversify their offerings.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you've limited your market.
Right.
And it's specifically with your YouTube channel, I'm jealous of your channel and my sister's channel because you and I started our channels about the same time, right? And then I think for the first few months, they seem to be growing about the same. And then all of a sudden, yours caught fire and just took off. And my sister, she started a channel, I think 3 months in, she had as many subscribers as I had after a year and a half.
Yeah. So
there's a legitimate way to get your image out, get your messaging out, grow your market, have it augment your revenue, because once you're monetized, especially once you get to a certain size, it becomes a legitimate revenue stream.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the YouTube channel does a good part of paying our rent here. It's a few tickets that we count on. I mean, as far as like when I say a few tickets, like our average ticket price is X, and the YouTube income is like someone here turning out a couple more work orders every month, which is a fabulous thing. It's something we want to grow, and it also helps advertise. We have done actually zero advertising other than installing a sign on the shop, and it's not. We budgeted for it. Like, all right, we're gonna have to run ads on this platform and do these and all these things, and it turns out we didn't need any of it at this point. Ooh, I better knock some wood, but we didn't need any of what we had figured would be needed to be necessary. And on top of that, marketing itself, I sat through so many marketing consultations with very talented like brand managers and people who were really trying to get me set on the right foot. And at the end of the day, I kind of ended up just running my same old brand. You know, there was after learning about what brand differentiation is and why, how to build brand loyalty, I found out that I had kind of stumbled onto some key, I had like fallen face first into some super specific brand targeting facets that were doing very well for me. And so like, let me just run these ones. Let me just run my pink logo. It's a brand differentiator because no one's running pink. Cool. You know, here it's scooters in the name. Boom. It's not like moto sport or power sport or moto anything. It's scooter, you know, so you know. And while we do scooter, motorcycle, ATV, you know, if you're looking for that, you have the brand and business differentiator with that.
And I think too, as you define whatever that target is, if it's scooters, it's not like you're not going to get inquiries from other customers who have ATVs and motorcycles and all, but at least you've defined your target market, so you're speaking right to who those people are.
Right.
And I think that's something that oftentimes gets lost on businesses where they believe they have to be too much.
Yeah.
Right. They believe they have to be everything to everybody. You know, and one thing I've learned in the tool business, especially in the mobile tool business, where you know, tool trucks cost more than every other place you're going to buy a tool. Yeah. Right.
It's true.
It is. It's absolutely true. And you know, all the trucks are expensive, regardless of the name on the side of them. Yep. You have to know who your customers are, and you have to market toward those. In fact, just today, this morning, and this was not one of the reasons I was late. We were having a new our replacement washing machine was delivered today. That's a long story, but they were replacing it this morning with a new unit, the one that sings a song. And as the kid was leaving, because he knows we're a tool company, he was asking about Milwaukee ratchets, you know, and I just took a delivery of a bunch of Milwaukee ratchets, so he sees them in the office, you know, all stacked up. I'm like, dude, buy them at Home Depot. I said, that's my best advice to you, because you're not going to want to pay my price on that. Like, I could not afford to sell it to him at a price that doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah. Right? Because that's just the way the market's constructed. That's just the way this business is constructed. And mechanics and technicians and tool truck guys all understand that.
Yeah.
Right? And what you have to do is sometimes you have to turn away some potential business. So for this kid, I really didn't want to sell him a ratchet because I didn't want him to have to pay my prices on this. You know, and I had a guy, we have a sales office, and there's a guy who runs a cell phone store downstairs from that office, and he was asking about tools. I'm like, it's not,
this is not for you, my guy.
Right? And it's hard to say that without sounding condescending, but it's not for him, right? And that's where I think as you kind of craft who your business is geared toward, it's really important to know who your business is not geared toward, and to kind of exclude people who are outside your target market who wouldn't be happy with, like, I know a guy would not be happy paying my price on a Milwaukee ratchet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because and the hilarious thing to me about that whole situation is that, like, pro level tools are just pearls before swine on the regular consumer.
True.
Like, no regular consumer needs a long handled flex head 88 tooth ratchet. No, dude, just whatever the Craftsman thing in the bottom of your junk drawer is gonna do just fine for you, Steve. It's just great. So like the fact that they're interested in, like, oh, what do you think of this? Like high level, it's like, dude, if you bought the Harbor Freight whatever thing in the 3 times you're going to use it, it'll probably be fine. As much as that hurts me to say, like, I don't ever want anyone to buy anything but like the best. But really, your needle nose pliers that you got at a yard sale are just as good in your hands as anything else, because your hands are well, I don't go in there. But anyway. So it's funny to me that anyone who approaches a tool truck, like I'm not going to go to a medical supply vendor and be like, well, what do you think about these Band-Aids? Like, what, I've been looking for some new gauze. Well, you got anything? It's like, dude, I don't need medical grade gauze, and I don't need them at the quantities and prices that business is set up to supply it at. So
Now, I think though it
just funny.
speaks to also what does the consumer understand about their own needs and about who suppliers are in the industry, right?
Oh, yeah.
As far as the guys who talk to me are concerned, oh, why can't I buy from you? You're right here. Why don't I go, instead of going to the store? Well, you can, but you have to understand who we're geared toward.
Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of an exclusionary business model. Not everybody is suited to buy off a tool truck.
Yeah.
Not everybody is suited to take their two-wheeled conveyance into your shop, and not everybody's suited to take their car into something. Right? It's just the way different shops position themselves in the market.
Yep.
It's how you market toward your demographic, whatever that is.
Right.
And have to, kind of pick and choose from there.
Yeah.
And that's not easy. That's not easy to do because a lot of, I think I told a buddy of mine who's a mobile tech. I thought it was interesting in his first year in business. As he's telling me what's going on and the things he's learning. First of all, the expenses. He says, "Man, I can't believe it costs so much to run a business."
Yeah.
Like I know.
My
know.
God,
He says
I
the
know.
insurance costs. I'm like, "Yep." And you kind of sit there and you kind of chortle knowingly because you know what he's going through. You've been
Yeah.
through it, right? So yeah, it's expensive. I get it. He says, "Wow, this is why everything's so expensive." Yes, it is because you have to carry a tremendous amount of insurance and you have a lot of bills. Stuff costs money, and sometimes it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we don't have buying power because we're small-time operators.
Yep.
Right. So you look at those things, and he said to me too how he's like, "Man, I can't." He says, "I'm finding myself having to say no to certain kinds of jobs." Ding, ding, ding. Yes, you do, because it's outside of your area of expertise. And if you get bogged down by the things that you're not well suited toward, it's going to drag down the stuff that is in your wheelhouse.
Yep.
And you're going to get a bad image, bad reputation. It's going to affect what is in your area of expertise, and those are the guys that you want to focus on.
And it's going to elevate your stress level. Like we're talking about that all the time. We get a call. I bet we get 2 to 3 calls a day on whether or not we service like the electric stand-up scooters,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because they're very in fashion right now.
Yeah.
And we don't. Honestly, because our labor rate is set up as a motorcycle shop labor rate. Like if I got to spend 2 hours on your little scooter, it's probably going to equal how much you paid for the entire scooter. So like I'm not like I could physically put a new wheel and tire on that for you, but like my vendors don't sell parts for that. So now I'm going to have to pay list price and mark that up, which is going to upset you. And then on top of that, it's the cost of what you paid for it is not going to allow you to feel comfortable paying so much for repair. But that stresses us out because we're like, okay, well, man, this really does seem like there's a lot of revenue we're leaving off the table. And maybe we could learn these things and find suppliers and do that. But that's just like way more stress than I'm willing to take on right now. And I know that like it's not going to help me solidify my actual revenue stream, which is keeping the lights on right now. So I need to dedicate myself to that. Maybe we'll pursue something with this later when the time allows us. But yeah, I got to exclude that kind of stuff. It's just not going to, it's going to do a disservice to my current customers, which is the biggest factor in that.
And it's interesting too that you mentioned how your supply channels are set up. Your vendors simply don't deal with certain kinds of parts.
Yeah.
Like our vendors simply don't deal with certain industries and tools. Like we can't get industrial tools. Like I can't get tools that like consumer grade stuff that a guy would want. Just like a little tool set that's just not available to me through my suppliers.
Yeah.
It's all pro grade, premium stuff. And as you know, so your direction is also set to a degree by what you can get from your suppliers.
Yeah.
If my suppliers only deal with certain kinds of tools, there's only certain kinds of people I can sell that to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. You're like, oh, you need a new bandsaw for, your 2.5 square foot apartment? Like, not like, I don't know. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's pretty, but it's also thrilling to have a supplier on board because it makes you feel so legitimate instantly. You're like, oh, I have this kingdom of products now. But yeah, I can't. I'm sorry, man. I can't get you. Like for a while, we only had one parts distributor, and so we had a very limited selection of tires.
Right.
And people, oh well, can you give me some Michelins? Well, no, we can't deal Michelin tires right now. Sorry. Like, I can. You're not going to like the price of it. But, you know. But, yeah.
Or why don't you just buy them from Michelin?
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Trust me, I would love to.
I've had people ask that about, you know, they just, and you don't expect people to understand how the business works.
Sure.
Right? But people, I think, oftentimes just assume if I sell gear wrenches, I buy it from Gear Wrench.
Yeah.
Right? If I sell Milwaukee, I buy from Milwaukee. That's not the case.
Yeah.
You know, people that operate on our scale buy from distributors. Those distributors buy from manufacturers because they're buying just within enough quantity to stock a warehouse.
Yeah.
Right? We don't buy that quantity.
Yeah.
Like, we have some inventory shelves that we can fill, and that's about it.
Yeah. Like Milwaukee has the time to you place an order for 2 ratchets. They're gonna be like, oh, okay, Lindsay Coyle needs 2 ratchets. Well, let's assemble those right now and put them out for him. Like, yeah,
doesn't work that way.
They're coming over on container ships that have to be bought and paid for and stocked before they can go into anybody's hands. Yeah, I know it's pretty, but at the same time, it's not something that I had really considered much. You know? I mean, although I don't know, maybe I had a slightly, just growing up in small businesses, had a little different perspective on what supply chain was going to kind of be like. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's definitely a disconnect between like, well, why not?
And it seems logical, right?
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating to me if there's a popular brand of something, and firearms is a good example because in our firearms line, it's not like we're dealing military contracts or police contracts. We are selling to the general public, unlike our tools, which were geared more toward the pro guy. So I think the expectation is that we would have access to every single brand under the sun.
Sure.
And yet we don't. Right? I only just signed on board with a distributor that sold Kimber, for example. Before then, I couldn't get a Kimber unless I paid retail for it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But especially with a high-end gun like a Kimber, good luck. You know, for me paying $1,200, I have to mark something on that to make money.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't. It's not affordable, and people are going to tell you, no, I'm not going to buy that from you.
Yeah.
You know, so I have a tool customer who he like many technicians, if there's something missing out of the set, he wants to replace with the very one that's missing out of the set.
Oh, that's me.
A lot of guys are like this,
me, yeah.
right? So he had a missing snap-on socket, something like, I don't know, 15 millimeter socket or whatever. It was a regular chrome 3/8 drive socket. He said, "Can you get me one?" Well, I'm not a snap-on dealer, right? So I can't buy it at dealer price, but I can go to snapon.com, you know, add to cart, pay for it, ship it, right? And I told him this. And he's like, "Yeah, I know." He says, "I just need that back in my set." I said, "Okay, but I want to make sure you understand all the costs involved. I'm going to go on Snap-on's website. I'm going to buy this socket, which is already overpriced at $18.
Yeah. Sure.
Right? I got to pay tax to Snap-on, right? Because I'm not a reseller for them, right? And they're not going to sell to me as a reseller.
Shipping.
Then ship it, right? Which is another $15, I think. And then I have to put tax on all that when I sell it to him, right? And I'm not even going to mark it up to make a profit. I'm just going to cover my costs. But by the time we're done with that, that's a $50 socket.
Yeah.
And he's fine with that. Like, okay.
That's a good customer right there.
He's a very good customer. So I'll do it for him. But it's one of those things that that's where that whole idea of supply chain and supply chain management comes into place. And you see how you see how it affects the end cost, the cost of the end consumer.
Sure.
At that point. Right,
Yeah.
whereas buying as a dealer is very, very different than buying as a consumer.
Yeah, and when I first started too, we were like, oh, the list price on this part is criminal. We're only going to charge this amount, and then like quickly realized like, you know, that list price is sort of set there to help you pay for the amount of, because I mean, it would be great if the part ordered itself as soon as I spoke it into existence. We need a regulator rectifier. Boom, it ordered itself. Sure. But I need to sit there, take my hands off of the bike, off of the action that is physically making money for the shop, sit down on the computer or go through the book, find the regulator rectifier, place my order. It has to be shipped, which I have to be paid for. You know, I've got to collect tax on it. There's all these factors that, wow, that list price now is kind of starting to seem appropriate. You know, when you actually start looking at all that. And yeah, we like to give our customers discounts, and sometimes really there is crazy markup on some products where like, hey, we don't need to be making $150 on this tire, you know. But I mean, it really is set there for the businesses to use to their advantage. They really do need that extra markup cushion.
Because that margin has to cover all your costs.
Yeah, 100%.
In addition to the cost of the part. And there's so many costs that are built in to owning and operating a business. It's kind of a miracle it all works. Back in my previous career in IT, I worked for a .com company in the late 90s, early 2000s. And they were an online retailer. When online retailing was still fairly new.
Yeah.
And they brought in a CEO who was a CEO of a good-sized brick-and-mortar chain of retailers in the New England area, a store called Zayre, Z-A-Y-R-E.
Terrible branding. No one even knows how to say that.
And I don't think they existed anywhere outside of southern New England. And so this guy comes in as a CEO, and the first company meeting he had, he said, I need to introduce you guys to the concept of margin. And he said there is no retail organization in the world, unless they reach stupid big levels like big box stores do, who can survive on a margin less than 35%.
Yeah.
Right? And he and I had gotten a private conversation after that as an aside, and he said, it's amazing to me. He says, I came aboard, he says, none of the senior management understood this concept at all. We're running a retail organization. And the senior management did not understand where you had to have your margin at a minimum just to keep the lights on and the payroll.
Yeah, where do you think the money? Yeah, I bought it for $100. I sold it for $105. I made $105. Like, my dude, no, you did not.
That's not the way the math works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's shocking to see the backside of it, because as a consumer, like when you put on your consumer hat, you just feel so ripped off.
I know,
especially in this era of the internet, where I can get on Amazon and see the tire or the regulator rectifier at very near the cost that the shop is purchasing
sometimes
it for.
Less.
Yeah, sometimes less.
I
know.
Yep.
It's a terrible thing. And then you're like, God, they're really going to charge me $200 for that? Like, I can get it online for $89, you know? So
no, I'm the same way, and it feels funny, and I kind of feel hypocritical, but you know, I get peeved when a customer comes on the truck, starts looking around, busts out his phone, starts comparing prices to what he's finding on Amazon, and saying, I can get it on Amazon for this. But what do I do as a consumer?
Yeah,
I'm
the
like,
same thing.
Oh, look, Amazon's cheaper. I'll get it from there.
Yeah.
You know, we all do it, and I think that it's where I try to position our company is in the value we provide, and most any company will do that, right? What's the customer getting for the money they're paying you? You know, and there has to be something real there. There has to be something of genuine value there, or you're not going to keep your customer.
Sure.
You know, you're not going to build a business, and that's where we really try. It's usually in the service end of things, quality parts, whatever. You know, your inventory has to be quality, but you have to provide a level of service that people are going to be willing to pay for and be a repeat customer to get.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to do, especially when that's something you have to do all the time. I mean, you have to consistently deliver that.
Yeah. Something that I find a lot of value in is just expertise. Mm-hmm. Like, I will shop in places just because of the people who work behind the counter.
Yeah.
Like, man, this is like a weird plug for Cothran's Lock and Safe.
Oh, they're great.
You can
I
get
love
keys,
those guys.
You can get keys cut all over this town. But you take a key or a lock cylinder and you put it on the counter, and the guy, he's like, oh, this is a 70s Toyota Corolla. You know, if you would have got me the lock cylinder out of the passenger door, there's a code on there, and I could have cut the whole set for the doors. You're like, dude, I just came here for that. Like, thank you. I just want to make sure. I don't care if you cost 2 times as much as any other place in town. When I come in and you know exactly what you're talking about, exactly what it's going, and I know it's going to be right, it's going to be quality, and if I have any questions, you can answer them. You've got my entire business, the entirety of my business. So
they're a great example, by the way.
Yeah.
Cothran's were they on Ben White?
Yeah, I use the one on Ben White.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's another location.
Well, because I think that is a great example and you use keywords there, cut a key, right?
Yeah.
I tried to get keys made for one of my trucks, and I went to Home Depot, cut the key. Right, well, we don't have a blank for that, but we'll use the next closest blank. They didn't work, right?
Whoa,
I
no
know,
kidding.
right, straight, right? So I go to some other place. Well, we don't have a blank for that, but try this one. Doesn't work. I'm like, golly, why is it so difficult to cut a key for this truck?
Yeah.
Right. It's not like everyone owns these trucks. This is one of the Isuzu cabovers. Very popular truck. Why can't I get a key made? And I was griping about it to a customer. He goes, "Oh, try Confidence." I'm like, all right, why not? Right? No one else can help me. So I drive in there. I say to the guy, "No one else can help me." I said, "So pressure's on." He goes, "I don't know. We'll see what we can do." Right? When someone approaches it with, "I don't know. Let's see," I have immediate confidence.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, "No, we got this." Right? Because
Yeah.
you might just be blowing smoke.
Well, they've been burned enough times.
Right? Yeah. So he looks at the key, comes out to the truck. Sure enough, it worked in the door, but it didn't work in the ignition. But it's the same key, right? So he's looking at it and he realizes you have to make an additional cut on this key on a bench grinder that the machine's not going to make for you.
See that? Yeah, and it's exactly that sort of expertise that is like when you put something down and they go, "Oh, that's a J1000B." You're like, already this guy knows enough to be able to think around the initial issues.
Right.
Exactly that. I need to use the restroom.
Go right ahead.
Cut that.
We'll edit. We're back.
We're back. All right. That perfectly segues into a preparation that I had that I didn't really give credit to before, and that was that being a technician prepares you to be your own business because of what you learn about specializing and what to do. Every technician who stays in the industry eventually will specialize in one aspect of whatever their industry is. You have transmission guys, you have front end guys, you have drivability guys, you have lifelong lube techs, That specialization is teaching you to target the market of the little microcosm of the shop. You don't get two front end guys in a shop because there isn't a market for two front end guys. So you have to find your niche in the shop of, hey, no one's doing hybrids in the shop. Hey, no one is doing, we don't have someone who does, who knows drivability on this make of vehicles. And so learning to target that stuff at the city, not only to avoid work that I didn't really want to do, like I don't want to replace the fuel pump in a Crown Vic or crawl around in the back seat where all the vomit and things are. Like learning to target things that would help me avoid those things did kind of teach me the economy of how to market myself, and that also your skills, no matter what they are going to bring a value somewhere. Some guys, there was a guy at one of the shops that honestly, he was not good at anything, but I'll be darned if he could not hang a door. That guy could hang a door. He had the little door caddy jig thing that went on the lift arm.
Yep.
Boom. Give him all the doors.
Okay.
We'll keep him around just so no one else has to do a door. They closed every time. The latches and strikers lined up. Hey, man, that's you. You're the door guy. And, there wasn't enough of a need to justify that. But it will happen for everyone. Everyone will eventually slot themselves into that. And so if you're flexible if you start with a good business, if you start with a good enough idea for your business that you can target it, and you're flexible enough to make your tweaks to make sure that it makes it into its slot in the market, I don't think there's a way to fail at that point.
I've seen a lot of guys who, I think the best way to describe it is confusion over that kind of thing, where they feel frustrated where they are. Mm-hmm. I want to move up, Okay. So what are the steps you got to take to get from being a GS to being a tech who's working on other things? And then once you're there, to your point, how do you specialize in something that you're going to build that skill and command the kind of money that you're going to command? And then how do you take that to the next level? I think a lot of guys just kind of get confused and discouraged early on. And we've talked about this in some of my other videos with some of other guys that I've had these chats with. I think there's a distinct lack of mentorship in the industry.
Oh, absolutely.
I think a lot of guys come in not realizing what can be. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot of frustration that comes in. And I had a really good conversation with a guy is in his early 20s. If you've seen the Robert Whitley interview video, he talked about he just spent a stupid amount of money on the Snap-on truck, not realizing that he shouldn't be spending that kind of money or buying those things.
Yeah.
That there's other things he should have focused on earlier in his career, different kinds of tools, different buying options and stuff like that, right? So he got off to a bad start and he got a bad taste in his mouth. It took him a long time to work through,
Yeah.
right? So there's guys who just don't know, get bad advice, get no advice even,
Yeah.
you know, and have a lot of things working against them where they would otherwise be able to achieve some greater things, but maybe they can't because they've been hamstrung already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the industry kind of positions itself to make technicians work every man for themselves.
Yes.
So I think that's where the lack of mentorship is derived from, is just that the fact that, like, hey, if I'm over there helping you, I'm literally taking money off of my paycheck. So the structure of the way that shops pay their technicians, while it does kind of create some sort of business sense for technicians because you're managing an overhead if you're like buying tools, specialty tools, and doing these things, and how many hours do I need to turn, and if I don't take as long of a lunch break, I can make a little more money here. And it's good for that. It's really bad for the community of technicians. And that was something that was extremely valuable working for the city of Austin and working for the last shop, is that it was team oriented. We weren't on flat rate. So it didn't matter. I mean, to an extent, it mattered. Did we get the job done under book time? But it was, no one's paycheck was determined by whether or not they beat book time. And so that created more collaboration and more chances to mentor younger technicians and, you know, to actually get advice from older technicians. I think that the industry has changed quite a bit anyway, though, where I don't want to out anybody, or like, I'm not trying to speak ill of anything, but I think the industry has changed drastically from when older technicians started. That they might be remembering a time that is no longer relevant. You know, when I started out, I did this and I did this, and this is how I got here. That path might not exist anymore for younger technicians. And I think that it's even how the job is sold now, I don't think is quite true to what the industry actually does.
And I think that there's guys who, the better older guys, understand that, man, we better be nurturing the next generation technician.
Sure.
Because if we're not taking care of the future of our own industry.
Right.
And how short-sighted is that? And yet, there's so many older guys that can't be bothered with the new guys. They don't want to help. They think, no, you have to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
I got an idea. How about helping them not learn how about helping them learn the easy way?
Right.
Right? Help them out, you know, so that they're not getting such a bad start in this business that they wind up getting frustrated saying, I'm done with this, I'm leaving. Like, I remember meeting it early on in my tool career here. I met a GS at a shop who he didn't want to do that at all. For, you know, he just had it as, it's just my job for now. I change oil and that's what I do. And you know, he really wanted to be a cop and that was his thing. But for him, he just had no desire to stick around in the industry at all.
Yeah.
And I think it's because he worked in a shop where there were just a bunch of old timers who didn't want to be bothered. If it wasn't him in that position today, they'd just get another kid in next week. It didn't matter who it was. Just change the oil, you know, get that done so these guys could work on the real work, you know, not, and they would put things like GS work in sort of the second-class citizenry category.
Yeah.
Where changing oil is beneath me. You
Sure.
know?
Yeah.
You know,
I
rotating those
don't
tires.
do
I don't do
Yeah.
tires.
How many times
know?
have I heard that? Oh, I don't do tires. Or like, paired with I don't do tires is always when they have to do tires, they always exclaim, oh, it's been so long since I've had to do tires. Like, they've got to, like, just in case they tear the bead or do something stupid, they have to, like, throw the disclaimer across the shop. Oh, I haven't done tires in 5 or 6 years, so I got to remember how the machine works. Like, man. Yeah, if I had a nickel, man. Absolutely. And you know what? I love tires. I love getting nitty-gritty with Scan Tool, doing some really in-depth diagnostic and drivability work, that's really great. I really love chassis and suspension and finding squeaks with chassis ears and stuff. But at the end of the day, I really love changing tires, man.
Do you?
Oh, it's like therapeutic for me. I love that. Well, the thing is, I think a lot of people they lose sight of that every job takes a certain level of finesse. And when you watch someone who does tires all day, every day, there's so much built-in finesse in what they're doing that, you kind of lose track of how complex the job is and how therapeutic it can be. Like, we have a manual tire machine here. Every tire gets spooned on, spooned off. And that can be very frustrating for some people. And some people think it takes a lot of force. It doesn't take force. It takes proper force in the correct applications, and if you have finesse, it all comes off smoothly. And when it goes smoothly, it feels great. It doesn't go smoothly every time.
No,
but
that reminds me actually of a few years ago. I got into cooking, and I was watching some online lessons through the Master Class program from a chef who big in the U.S. I guess he's not a celebrity chef, so most people have no idea who he is, but he was talking about how, when he got started, he got a job, I think, at his mother's restaurant. And she said, you're going to be washing dishes. That's how you're going to start. And for some reason, he was the kind of person who could latch onto that and see value in repetition, in that instant feedback you get. He said, I'd wash a dish. I'd know right away if I did it properly because the dishes would be clean or not.
Yeah.
Right? He said, and I knew. That's my instant feedback. He says, there was value in the ritual. Yeah. Here's how I stack my plates. Here's how I stack my cups. Here's how I stack my bowls. Right? He says, in loading the machine. So there is value, and he became on to be a humongous, famous, chef who, in the chef circles and all, who's achieved quite a bit in his industry. And I think that seeing value in the things that we may think are beneath us can be incredibly valuable. Because how important is a perfectly applied tire? How important is making sure that your oil drain plug is put back on? Right? I mean, these things are really, really important.
Absolutely critical. Yeah, it does not matter how up to date the software on your scan tool is. If the motor leaves the shop with no oil in it, it's completely irrelevant.
And it's expensive to fix.
Yeah, and I do love the ritual of it. Yeah. I love that, and you have a very clear sense of halfway. You're like, okay, old tire's off. Right. Oh, look how nice this new tire is. And I'm a bit of and maybe that's because, really, I got my first real start in the industry at a tire shop, and my God, I put on so many tires. Mm-hmm. I started at Tirerama in the summertime, and I worked there for, I don't remember how many snow seasons I did, but in Montana, snow tire season comes on. There's a legal date that you are allowed to put your snow tires on, and at that date, you had better be ready.
Okay.
You're going to be sleeping at the shop because people are coming with their garbage bags full of snow tires, and it's, one for one. You want your summer tires off, you want your snow tires on, and just throwing them. And you can't damage them because they need to be reused next year. Yep. You need to make sure that you're treating the customer's car well, all those things, and I still love it. Man, I could still use a Coates 4040, although it's not really applicable anymore because no one's using steel wheels. But just that, peel on, peel off. It's like very wax on, wax off sort of Zen garden sort of thing.
And you don't always realize how much you've developed until you look back on it.
Or until you try and teach someone.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, that's great. At the last shop I was at, training younger technicians and teaching them how to use a tire machine and hey, do you know why you have to do it this way? Do you understand the concept of the radius of the bead is smaller than the radius of the tire? Otherwise, the tire the radius of the bead is smaller than the radius of the wheel. Otherwise, the tire would come right off the wheel as soon as you put it on. So how are you going to make one small circle go over a larger circle? This is the technique, and this is why the machine is shaped this way, and why it does it this direction, and all those things. And that is so rewarding to me because you're kind of understanding, like it would be like understanding how an onion caramelizes. Like I don't actually know. I just know that when it does that, it tastes like this.
Right.
But yeah, so much value in just the sitting down and teaching someone, because it really makes you consider a lot of like, yeah, you know what, that is what I'm doing, and that is why it works this way. And I have to think about, like, you know, I do it second nature. You know, I'm
Right.
putting my hand here and doing this and there. I have to think like, oh, I need to tell this person to put their hand here and why to put their hand there.
And there's always this fine line, I think, between training somebody in proper technique and all, and just sort of prescribing something that doesn't need to be prescribed. Right?
Yeah.
Because some is preferential, some it's you do for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that the adult mind wants to know why we do things certain ways.
Sure.
Right. So I make it a point, like if when we hire people, bring them on and put them through, you know, the training process that we have, I'm going to tell you to do certain things certain ways. And I'll tell you why we do them that way.
Yeah.
Because as an adult, you know, the reasoning, just do it that way because I said so, doesn't work anymore. Worked when we were 6 years old. Not when you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, and you know, it just doesn't work that way.
I don't think it works that well for 6-year-olds.
Well,
either,
you might be
Lindsay,
right about that.
Honestly.
But explaining the whys
Yeah.
and underscoring the importance of it, I
Yeah.
think goes a long way to showing somebody the value of doing something a particular way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just so frustrating when someone says, we got to do it this way, and you ask them why, and they don't have an answer. Or like, man, this is sort of tangential, but like also true for how things operate.
Yeah.
If you ask someone who is doing a repair, and I've had this conversation with a lot of technicians, you say, you see them replacing some component, and they've done some sort of test to know it's failed or whatever, and you ask them, well, what is the test telling you? Like, how do you know that it's failed? Well, it says in the book. It's like, well, what are you doing? How do you know? Because if you have that knowledge, that little extra background knowledge of how the test shows you what is wrong, that might be applicable to some other thing down here. And when you ask them, well, that's how it always is. I get this code, I change this thing, and it goes away. They don't know, you know, well, the cam phaser operates on this parameter, and this resulting oil pressure on the bleed circuit will cause this symptom. If you don't know that, then you can't apply that knowledge to that job only exists in that slot. Oh, I've got a Chevy Equinox, this code, cam actuator, you know.
In a vacuum, isolated from the rest of the vehicle.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Heaven forbid you get something weird. And that's also kind of where I was saying that my knowledge base grew so much working for this independent shop, because man, there some things you are not going to find a service manual. We recently had a Dutch moped in here, a 1977 Batavis Starflight 2, which apparently was a very unpopular model. I don't know why. It was beautiful. There's no service manuals available. Even praying to St. Google could not find any information on how this thing. But you know, you look at what they were going for. You look at their, similar designs from other manufacturers. You're like, okay, typically in the 70s, this is how the points were used. And like, of course, Batavis didn't make their own points and condenser. They were using Denso or another manufacturer's parts. So, okay, I recognize this point set. So how is it set on a Honda? Okay, it's like this. Okay, it works. Boom, boom, boom. You go through it that way. But therein, recognizing the knowledge of why is way more valuable than completing the job.
What do you find more frustrating? Somebody who has I guess they're both the same thing. I was going to ask you, what do you find more frustrating? But I think they're both the same. If you ask somebody why they do something, and they just right, or someone who's always done something a certain way because that's just the way I was taught.
Oh man!
Right, and then you talk. Right, let's talk to the guy who taught you, which we probably will never be able to do.
Yeah.
But it's probably because that's the way he was taught.
Yeah.
And these things are now. He may not be wrong.
Yeah.
He may be completely right and correct in the way he's doing something, but without knowing the why or how it affects something else, or understanding what underlies, the test that he's doing or the repair that he's making, or understanding the importance of that, I think is one very limiting factor. And that's one reason why I think a lot of people don't move up and through a career, why they don't start their own shops, why they don't have that mindset to learn more and have a better understanding of their own industry.
Yeah. Well, yeah. To answer your question, without a doubt, the first situation, the person who does something and it's because I was showed that and never asked why, that is frustrating to me, but nothing's worse than, I don't know. Like, at least you have like, well, I was taught that way, and maybe the person who taught me didn't understand, and that's why they didn't pass the knowledge down.
Right.
You can kind of like give them the benefit of the doubt on that side. I don't know. It's like 100% biggest pet peeve for me. Like, you don't know? You didn't care to find out? You don't respect yourself or the job that you're doing, whatever it is. You don't respect your customer. That even comes down to like not even using like quality parts or quality tools. Like, that's just a disrespect for yourself and your customer. It's like, yeah, a doctor probably could make your incision with a rusty butter knife.
Yep.
Is that what you want to pay for? Like, does that doctor have so little self-respect for their job that they would use the incorrect tool?
Well, that's a good segue, because tool buying is something that permeates our industries. It's the one thing that we have in common as people and business owners, and it gets discouraging to me to see guys who. It's one thing if you're a brand new technician and you're tooling up, you're gonna have to save money where you can until you get to the point where you're making enough money to buy better tools.
Well, at that time, though, not to talk over you, at that time, when you're like making the decision to make better tools, you have found what value you need to find in your next set.
Yes. Yes.
You're like, oh, you know what? This ratchet is comfortable. It doesn't have enough swing angle to complete these jobs.
Right.
So my next ratchet, I can forego these benefits that I had on this one for one that is going to bring me value here.
Right. Yeah, and there's guys who, I think that's a natural evolution of a guy who understands and is learning more about his own job and his own place in the industry. And it frustrates me when I see guys who have been turning wrenches for years, who are still getting by on the consumer grade tools.
Oh yeah.
That they've never progressed in that. And I know it frustrates shop owners too. There's a shop that I service who they hired two fairly new guys, and they've been working there for I think 3 months or so each. Neither of them has made a tool purchase from anybody.
Nope.
Right?
You're out.
Not even from Amazon.
Not in my shop.
They don't get on the trucks, which I understand if you don't get on the trucks because it's expensive and you're new. I get that. How about Amazon? How about Home Depot? How about Harbor Freight? How about buying something? If you know you need tools, right? Because it's bad when you use a low grade tool. It's worse when you keep borrowing everyone else's tools because you just don't buy even a low grade tool.
Well, that is right back to that person who, I don't know.
Right.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
You didn't care. Like, something that I find a lot of value in the tool truck is that, like, recently I needed a new set of drill bits for the shop.
Yeah.
We want our drill bits have been abused and worn out. I want a nice set that only lives at the drill press. They get put away. They kept only under the best conditions. And I go to you, Lindsay. I like these ones. What do you think about them? Do they good? You have the report. Well, I know these shops use them. I know machinists who like them. You taught me a little bit about how machinists call them drills, and it's a drill bit driver or what. I don't remember what you said. It was neat to learn it. It was neat. I liked it. But that's extreme value because I don't trust Amazon reviews. Right. Everyone can just buy reviews, but I know you've been in the shop and you've seen things happen. And you've also seen other things happen in the shop. You're like, hey, man, I see you're doing a motor mount on a Ford Explorer. The last shop I was at, the guy was using this tool. Would you like to buy it?
It's a natural way to have a tool buying conversation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot comes from that where you see guys struggling with something. I know there's a tool that can help them out.
Yeah.
I'll offer it up. I'll suggest it, and see what comes of it. You may not get the sale, but at least you're showing some value.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and going back to these technicians who are not investing in their own tools, I just can't even. That's like so infuriating to me because I think it sort of disrespects the industry in the fact that like no, this isn't in every man's job. This isn't in everybody's junk drawer. You cannot pull this fuel pump out of this vehicle. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just use your pocket screwdriver and some pliers you found on the floor. And to reduce it to that reduces the seriousness that a lot of technicians have put into investing in their own tools and investing in their knowledge bases. And I'll tell you right now, like, no one will work for this company with that mindset.
Right.
Because not only do you need to show the initiative that you are investing in yourself and your product and you're going to do good work for this company, but also things are always evolving. There's new tools that are for new applications every single day. You know, I need this Toyota specific tool. How many people have said to you every single day, you know? Or I need the tool for the Dodge knuckle, and I need the tool for this and that, or the, you know, vintage Ford EEC Ford scan tool connector. Like, it's a specific thing that you need for a specific thing. You cannot just throw whatever you have at it.
And I think that's the point that you made just a moment ago was a very good one. This is not an everyman's job. And I think back when I was in high school, outside of in a city outside of Boston, Massachusetts, it was a big high school, had a tech voc program, and I was interested in auto mechanics for a brief period of time, because I say briefly because I got it extracted from my mind as an idea, as a good thing to do. Mm-hmm. Because where I was growing up in that town, in that high school, the tech voc program, it wasn't for people like, no, you have more potential than that.
Yeah,
exactly. This is a college prep high school. Mm-hmm. You know, you're expected to go to college. The kids that do that, look, they're not going to make it. They're not going to college. We're just going to stick them off the tech voc program. They're not going to bother the rest of the student body. They're just going to do their auto mechanics and their body work and get greasy and dirty and go home, and no one's going to know. They're kind of like the kids we don't like to talk about.
Yeah.
Right. That's how the mechanic industry was shown to me as an impressionable teenager.
It's still shown that way today, I think.
I was going to wonder about that. It's been a long time since I've been in high school, so I don't know if it's evolved or changed. But my impression is it hasn't.
Yeah.
Based on the mindset of a lot of new guys in there, I do it because, I don't know, I can.
Yeah.
Or I can't do other things, so this is what I do.
Right.
Well, you're taking something that requires specialized tools, skills, experience, and abilities, and you're just diluting it into this thing that, you know, I could turn a wrench.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you can turn a wrench a lot better if you understand the physics of what's happening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, it's one thing to, you know, take apart a carburetor, but it's another thing to understand Bernoulli's principle and why the fuel is drawn from the float bowl and things like that. And that knowledge expanse is going to affect everything that you do down the line from there.
Yeah.
You're going to understand all different physical things. Or, you know, seemingly unrelated systems on a vehicle might have applicable knowledge that you learn from one other piece. But I think even though high school auto shop classes have gotten a lot better, and I've seen some, like when we were recruiting interns for the city of Austin, I got to travel around and go to Crockett High and high schools here. They're doing amazing things, but the vibe you get from the shop is still, you know, I don't have much potential, so maybe I'll just burn my hands for money.
Yeah.
You know, and the industry already, we're losing technicians. We're hurting for technicians. I once heard that Toyota opened their factory in San Antonio and found out there weren't enough technicians to repair the robots that built the trucks. And they put out this huge thing. They would pay you and put you through school and pay you $80,000 a year as soon as you got out if you were going to sign on a contract to be a robot technician for them. And like, that's shocking. And so hopefully technicians can wise up and see that we do have a value, because everyone wants this desk job where they don't get dirty and they sit in the AC and whatever.
I've had that desk job where you don't get dirty and sit in the AC.
Yeah.
There's a reason I do this now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah. But still society still kind of views us, and that's
Yeah.
still why I prefer the term technician over mechanic. I think it has a different connotation. You would never call somebody a pharmacy mechanic, like it's a pharmacy technician. Why? Well, they're using technical equipment, technical specifications. They're well educated in the subject matter. That is what a technician is to me. Someone who's like, well, I know the specification for this is X, and I have executed this with these systems and experiments, and here's what my analysis has brought. Instead of like, well, we put a new carburetor on it, but it still doesn't run.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. There's that guy again.
I did what I knew I could. I did what I knew.
Yeah, why'd you put a carburetor on it? Oh, that's what the guy before me taught me.
Yep.
Put a carburetor on it.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately where a lot of this industry is. Well, fortunately for guys who have ambition and guys who want to learn and know, there's plenty of room for that, because it's not like, even though there are certifications and there are standards that you can meet as a technician, that's just one indicator.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a credential. It shows that you've done certain things certain ways and you've learned certain things, but it doesn't show how you apply your craft. It doesn't show how smart you are. It doesn't show how good you are working with customers and your fellow colleagues,
or how good you are at managing your own work.
Oh,
You could be a master, L1, L2, L3, and everything. But if you're lazy or you're bad at managing your time, you might only get 2 brake jobs out. It wouldn't matter.
That's right.
So, yeah, it's all it's all an equation with so many variables. Each one affects the situation in a pretty dramatic sense, but it is the accumulation of all the variables. So, I think it's really interesting again that another talking point I have with a lot of technicians is that people who don't want to get certified, people who they don't see, well, a piece of paper isn't going to help me fix the car, and why I definitely agree with that 100%, because I've met some people who have certifications that I'm like, I don't know. You must be the luckiest question guesser, or you just crammed really hard the night before. I don't know. Yeah. I've met technicians like that, and that's what everyone has. But I've never met somebody who went and got a certification and who was worse off because of it. You almost always learn something from. I believe there's no bad knowledge, regardless if it seems inapplicable to your situation. You're going to learn something, and it's going to change you for the better. So even if I don't have any desire to repair automatic transmissions, right? Go get the automatic transmission certification, because you'll learn something about the way that system works that maybe will be applicable downstream. You're like, oh, you know what? The reason the transmission has to be at temperature is because this thermostatic switch has to open. And in some drivability thing, the thermostatic switch isn't opening, and you're like, oh, I know that from the test that I took. Let me test for that part of it. It's always been valuable to me to learn whatever I can learn from any system, especially if you have an employer like the City of Austin who will reimburse you for getting those certifications. Why not?
Why not?
It's free education, I have that touch and go with that too, because I think there are a lot of people who don't put any credit towards certifications.
Yes.
Because the certifications will not fix the Buick.
Correct.
Certainly will not. They will sit there on the wall and be exactly as you put them.
And your diagnostic scanner is not going to tell you.
Oh, yeah. It will not fix the car. Absolutely. And it actually won't even diagnose the vehicle. A lot of people don't know that. It'll read you a code. It'll tell you, hey, the computer detected an error in this vicinity.
Yep. Look there. Yeah.
Start looking. But the tools don't make the man. The certifications don't make the man or woman, I should say. The person don't make the person. But they certainly do help. And any knowledge is good knowledge on that front. So everyone get your certifications, Stay relevant too. That's another thing.
Yes, yeah.
A lot of people don't stay relevant. And that's another reason. Showing that you are a recertified master technician shows that you have taken a more updated test, and that even though you got your certification back in 1971 when everyone was working on points and, basically lawnmowers and tractors, it shows that, like, yes, while I did get it then, I'm staying relevant. I know about bidirectional controls, and I know about battery management systems and how the new AC systems are built to compensate the start-stop, or compensate for the start-stop engine technology that is becoming ubiquitous in the industry, and kind of understanding those trends.
Well, I don't want to learn about hybrid vehicles.
Oh yeah, I know.
Why not? Because I don't want to.
Yeah.
Well,
then you won't.
Then you won't, and you might be hurting.
And then some young technician is going to learn about them,
Yep.
and he's going to get to hang out in a Prius all day, run by the health department, instead of climbing in the back of a dog truck, try and chase down some, rodent-eaten wires and things like that.
After we pass a pressure washer to get the stank out while he crawls in there.
Yeah. I remember one time we had a dog truck come in, and this is where knowledge hurt me one time. I'm pretty good at picking locks. Mm-hmm. And a dog truck came in. They had lost the keys to, like, the equipment. It was like a service body kind of truck, you know? So it had, and those are very easy locks to pick.
Sure, oh yeah.
So they're like, all right, pick it. I'm like, cool. So I picked this lock, opened the door, instantly just dog food coming out on me. Like, just all the dog food bins had, it's this huge mess. Now I have to pick up. The smell is horrendous. It's like, man, why did I volunteer myself for this?
It's tough. It's necessary.
Yeah.
But if you can pick and choose, like I feel bad for we service a lot of trash companies.
Oh yeah.
Especially on a rainy day when those things roll in the shop.
Man,
and you got to crawl underneath it.
Heroes.
Oof, they really are. Those guys, they're in the trenches every day.
Yeah. Just maggots dropping into their mouths.
Oh, I mean, I don't know anyone who enjoys it, but it's a really good sector of the industry to be in. Mm-hmm. Pays pretty well.
It should pay more. They should be the highest paid technicians.
You're not kidding.
I think it should go sanitation equipment, helicopter technician, aircraft technician, and then from there, trickle down. But sanitation equipment, man, they should be all driving brand new Lincolns.
Well, I got to say this: the parking lot is decked out with some pretty nice, new-looking vehicles. I'll say that.
Nice trucks out there,
yeah. I mean, there's so many sectors that are underappreciated. I think when you look at sanitation, mass transit, things like this.
Yeah.
That the quality of the work that a technician does is so vitally important, and it takes things to another level. A brake job on a car is extremely important. A brake job on a trash truck or a bus?
Yeah, tell me about it.
I mean, that takes it from all at the top to higher than that.
Yep.
Right? There's so much more on the line.
Oh.
And it's easy, I think, for guys who are in those industries, I work on this stuff all the time. Think for a second, if you're feeling frustrated with where you are in your career, and you think that what you do doesn't matter, think for a second what would happen if you were really bad at your job.
Yeah.
And that should scare you to wanting to be good at your job.
Absolutely. Or at least want to invest in some decent tools.
Ooh, nice. I like how you brought that around. Very good.
Respect yourself,
And respect for each other.
Yeah.
This seems like a pretty good jumping off point.
Sure.
So thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge and your experience.
Yeah, it was great.
It's been terrific.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on to your platform. It's been great. Good luck, and I hope you keep coming by on Mondays.
Absolutely, will.
We'll
keep
keep buying
in fact, I'll
tools
see you
from
Monday.
Oh, good. Yeah. Good.
Oh, I forgot to bring your extractor today.
That's
Shucks, your number 3 extractor came in.
We'll catch you next time.
Yeah,
what about my grease gun? I need a new grease gun.
That's still on the way.
Sure it is.
It is. I was just checking the order. Back orders have been horrible.
Right. Oh, yeah. Supply chain.
Oh,
yeah.
Man. It's been a thing.
The Suez Canal. My
another ship.
My grease gun.
Another ship blocked the canal. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we'll jump off here. Thank you so much for sticking with us and watching. We've got fantastic videos coming up. Some more stuff with Garrett coming up. This toolbox behind us, we're going to do a tour of it so you can check out all the cool tools that Garrett owns and look for other videos like this that talk with other shop owners and seasoned technicians who can tell us all about their experiences in the industry, as well as some toolbox tour and review videos that we got coming up. So do me a favor, Click down here now to subscribe so that you don't miss any of it. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, use a tool. Don't be one.